Everyday heroes, extraordinary vision, stories and inspiration from our world to yours. This is WSA Radio.
I have to tell you that several times during the movie, I would say to my husband, hit pause. And I would grab my pen and I would write down some of the things the quotes that were spoken, because I feel like you could put them on a poster and sell them and have people put them on their walls as statements of inspiration. There were so many of those statements. I was actually quite profoundly impressed with the amount of wisdom and human insight and really what I call the higher intelligence that people have. And so I just everything about that movie I just absolutely loved. I love the cinematography. I was so jealous. I was thinking to myself, how did you get some of those shots? How were you able to get access to so much of that beautiful background and the facilities that you were able to film in? Like, it was just, they were incredible.
Well, you know, what I love about making films, if you're a filmmaker, writer, director, is that you work alone in solitude for so long, and then suddenly, bang, you're out there and you're collaborating with people who will take your dream, take your vision, and not only fulfill it, but go beyond that. And I had an amazing cinematographer in Ben Smithard. I had an amazing production designer in Simon Bowles, who not only found amazing locations with my wonderful, wonderful location manager, but then embellished on those. I mean, those locations are dressed as well. They're not, we didn't find them like that and shoot. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why we couldn't is because there were only so many of these houses around the UK, particularly around London, where we filmed. And every single costume piece shot in England, you know, goes to one or several of these houses. So we have to make them look different. We have to try to make them look, you know, unique to our movie and totally different from the last British costume drama you saw. So my production designer worked so hard to fulfill my mood board, to fulfill his idea of telling the story through his craft. You know, and in partnership, it was really important to me that everybody worked in partnership. And I had a mood board and also a color palette that nobody was allowed to deviate from. So, you know, costume worked hand in hand with production, production worked hand in hand with costume, and to really create something that was harmonious on screen. And, you know, that's just when you have a team of like-minded people who are committed to telling the story, who are highly sensitive people, like myself. And I chose people who I could tell were highly sensitive like myself. And my goodness, that can be very troublesome to you as well as your blessing. But for me, I love it. And also all real control freaks in a way that I love, because everything down to the detail. And that's me. I'm everything down to the detail, to the last stitch in the dress. And these people, Anushya, my costume designer, all of them were exactly like this. So I could not have done this without them. All they did was take what I had in here and help me implant it on the screen. And, you know, in the end, that's what you do it for, because I'm poor. I mean, we don't do it for the money. We do it for the experience of collaborating, and then the experience of sitting in the back of an audience who don't know that you're there and hearing their reactions to the movie, you know.
I love how you give credit to your team. I love how that you recognize that creativity, or really anything in life, is a collaborative process. Nobody gets to where we are today, even in life, in relationships, in our work. Nobody gets there without the help and support and sacrifice, and sometimes unknown sacrifice, of those who say they love us and support us.
Absolutely, completely. And I mean, and this is why the movie is dedicated to my father. And this is why many of my team also struggled so hard to kind of honor his name, because my father was an oral storyteller, and he was very eloquent. Like Lord Mansfield, he was extremely eloquent and articulate. And whatever ability I have to storytell, I believe first and foremost came from the seeds that he laid within me. And what, as I say, whatever wit and astute kind of observational skills are inside me, I very much believe they came from my mother. And so, you're standing on the shoulders of giants, right the way through. And I don't consider those giants necessarily those that have just passed away. My team, my crew raised me, and allowed me to be the best director. And you're always thankful for that.
Yes. You've now chosen to be working on a new film. I believe it's called Unforgettable.
That's right.
From what I understand, and very little that's out there about it, this is a totally different movie that you've made in the past. And I'm very curious about why, number one, you would have chose this script and what you hope to have this script mean, because obviously, I'm also a highly sensitive person, as you are. I think this industry attracts that. And I'm very curious about why. Just go ahead and tell me, what was your thinking process behind it?
Yeah. Well, so just in terms of the story, I can only kind of reiterate at the moment what's out there at the moment, which is Unforgettable is for sure about a first-time wife coming to terms with her second wife counterpart, the woman that her ex-husband goes on to marry. And, in many ways, it seems very different on the surface to anything I've done before, though my first and second films are also very different to each other. But what they all three movies have in common is that we're looking at the female experience. We're looking at issues of exploring identity. We're looking at issues of status. And we're looking at issues of self-value in terms of the woman's experience. And all three of these movies have this in common. Now, I've been both a first wife and I'm now a second wife. And I felt, first and foremost, what attracted me to the project was Christina Hodson's script, which is incredible. Christina is a British writer living in Los Angeles, and is just so clever. And I have never worked on anything that I haven't written before. And I was absolutely desperate to have that experience of writing something that I myself would never be able to write, but that I felt I could do something wonderful with in terms of a director. And in Christina's script, I found that. But I also found an experience that I recognize, which is that of being the second wife. And the idea of sort of coming to terms with being the second wife, trying to find my own identity within that context, trying to find, hold on to the Amma that I know and previously knew. And then learning that actually you also can grow through the experience. You also can become more of yourself than perhaps you were previously. You can learn about your strengths. You can learn about elements of yourself that perhaps you haven't explored. I'm a stepmother now, which is something I hadn't been when I made my first movie. And, the experience has also made me grow through all kinds of experiences. And I'm grateful for those experiences, although at the time, sometimes it was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. So I wanted to, A, do a thriller, because I haven't done one before, but B, look for something that would stimulate in me the hunger and the ability to explore and analyze who we are as women, despite and in spite, and as well as being a thriller. And this script allows me to do that. And at the same time, despite the fact that I've been a second wife, I also have a great deal of compassion for the first wife, and understanding and empathy. And I felt that this was a film that in many ways had characters that would have touched everybody in some way. Everybody has a friend who's just become a stepmom, or who is a stepmom, or who is a first wife and who's having to deal with the second wife or vice versa, or is a stepchild or has a stepbrother or sister, or, it's sort of, we live in this world where 50% of marriages, end in divorce. And so inevitably, this is a world that may have touched many of us, and so something we can all identify with. And then, as the guy, or you could swap this around, if you're the woman who has a first husband and the second husband, whenever you're the partner who's sort of in the middle of it all, there's a whole rash of stuff you have to deal with, stuff you have to look at, stuff that you have to allow yourself to face and grow through, and make decisions, and perhaps step up in a way that you haven't been called to step up to before. And so this is very much the two women's story, but it's also a place for the man to kind of explore his position in all of this as well. And I just found it such a relevant and current piece of work, such a heartfelt piece of work, and in so many ways such an important piece of work. Very different to Belle, but as important in terms of who we are today, that I didn't want anybody else to direct Christina's script.
How did you actually get a hold of her script? Did someone, literally someone pick up a phone, or was it an email? How did you find it?
Well, I was at the point where Belle had not been released yet in the States or in the UK and Europe, but a lot of people had seen the movie. We were doing preview screenings, and we had also screened in Toronto. And a lot of offers started to pour in, and many of these were yes to direct other people's work, and some of these were for me to sit down and start writing again. And I thought, what, I never want my next project to be too similar to my last. I always want to be able to surprise, and because there are so few women directors in the industry, especially women directors of color, I really want to show that I can direct any movie any guy can direct. And so I want to show a body of work that's diverse. And so I had sort of said to my agents, I would love to direct somebody else's work, and I would love to pitch as well. I'd like to go in there and pitch for a piece of work that they're not necessarily thinking about me for. And so a whole load of scripts came in, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to read all of this stuff? I'm still doing so much. And I started reading, and Christina's was very, very early on in that bulk of screenplays that came in. And I was just like, good Lord, I've got to do this movie. I've got to find a way. So my agent was like, are you really sure you're going to have to pitch for this? And I'm like, yes, I'll pitch. So there I was pitching from Holland by phone to LA, thinking, well, if nothing, this is at least going to be an experience for me. I will grow from this experience. And, things were on my side. I got the job. And what's even better is that, it's two female producers who are experienced, crazy talented, and so this is a very feminine piece of work. That's not to say it's a piece of work that will appeal to only women, but I mean it's a piece of work that has a lot of feminine energy kind of birthing it. And I just feel so lucky about that. I really do.
That's amazing. I do think that, as we've said before, the movies are going to serve a far greater purpose than just an entertainment value. Otherwise, what's the point?
What's the point?
Yeah, if it's not going to leave somebody's life thinking something different, then it's just another piece of work. And while creatively probably nice, it really needs to have an impact. So I think of the demographic of women today that really, our generation, our population is getting older. So a lot of women that attend these movies are an older group of women.
Yes.
A lot of women are losing their husbands after 20 to 25 years of marriage. The marriages are, finally disintegrating, which probably should have happened years ago. When you imagine your audience and you imagine the characters that are going to be playing in there, how are you going to marry those two pieces together? Because although I know a lot of young second wives, the bulk of them are really middle age and above, into that woman of a certain age. How are you planning on identifying those characters to maybe someone like myself who's, of that certain age? And I'm not going to be appealing. I'm not necessarily going to find appeal in a young woman. I think she doesn't really get it as much as an older woman does. Hey ladies, would you like to be part of a powerful group of women who are moving and shaking and up to big things? Well, join the community at WSA and get started today with a free associate membership. Just log on to www.joinwsa.com. That's www.joinwsa.com.